And it's not to say there's anything wrong with having a business partner, because sometimes if you don't have a business partner, the business isn't going to happen. And in
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
cases, absolutely. But if you can do a business by yourself, then you should.
Yeah.
Because I found with business partnerships, there's just different values there, I think, a lot of times. And everybody, no value is necessarily like right or wrong. But for me, it's always been really important to me things like, I want our staff to think of this like a career. I don't want to
Yeah.
be like, some of our competitors where they pay staff minimum wage and they're going through a new employee every week. Like I want to show staff like I value them. And so,
Hmm.
I mean, from when we opened, we've offered medical and dental insurance. We're adding 401k this year. I mean, so I had picked my first out of state location. I was
Okay.
gonna open. I had done all this research. I had somebody working on for like 6 months, narrowing it down to five. Then I picked the final one. We'd been looking at buildings. And then a competitor announced they were opening one there with a franchisee. And I was just
Okay.
like, oh my, I was like devastated because I just spent so much time. I had no idea like they were looking or anything. And I was just like, oh. And that kind of made me realize, okay, if I don't franchise, then I'm going to not fulfill the vision that I
Yeah.
have, which is for
Right.
us to be in the top 10. And I feel like comparing us to competitors, even, I just feel like we should be the ones there because of how the whole package, like not just what we have in our program, but how we treat staff, because how you treat staff is important. I mean, for us, we always say employees are number one, because I mean, if you don't have happy employees, you're not going to have happy customers.
That's true.
Well, my mom is a true Midwestern mom with lots of hot dishes. Um, we ate dinner together as a family every night.
Hmm.
Um, and it was just the four of us. I have a little sister. And so just basically catching up and having hot dish,
Yeah.
tater
Yeah.
tot especially.
Tater tots was a favorite, huh?
Yep.
What city did you guys grow up in?
Minnesota, the Twin Cities. I grew up in Cottage Grove.
Okay.
It's a suburb.
Okay. Yep. Very cool. Very cool. So, were you expressing entrepreneurialism, at an early age? Did you have any types of, projects or things that you were trying to launch when you were a little kid?
You know, not really. I mean, I like babysat. I think like
Hmm.
like half of the kids when they're little. I did grow up though. My grandfather was an entrepreneur.
Okay.
He had a gas station and land and bought other commercial properties, and so that was that was a bit of inspiration seeing him with that. My
Hmm.
parents weren't entrepreneurs, but just in professional careers,
Yeah.
so that helped. But no, not any projects, I guess, growing up like that.
Yeah. Did you spend any time with your grandfather, like on those projects and on his lands and sites and all of that?
Not on his land and sites, but I did spend a lot of time at his gas station. I remember emptying the vending machines and getting the coin getting the
Yeah.
coins, and that was a very memorable experience. I also remember he was mayor of Cottage Grove too, and so I
Okay.
remember being in the back of the pickup truck when kids still did that, and putting
Yep.
out the campaign signs, and so I definitely was around that growing up with him.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, those types of experiences. So we've interviewed probably about 100 entrepreneurs, and it always seems like most of the entrepreneurs always have some type of inspiration growing up as a child with some type of entrepreneurialism or somebody who's in business. So it's great to hear that you had that inspiration. So now, did you go to college or anything?
Yeah, I did. I went to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. I got a bachelor's in psychology and
Hmm.
political science, and then I got a master's in advocacy and leadership, and went back for a PhD, but
Oh
did
wow.
not do the dissertation. So
Okay.
everything but the dissertation and evaluation, educational policy, like surveys, focus groups, things like that.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So, what was your? I guess what did you do after college? How did you start advancing into where you are today?
Yeah. So after doing my bachelor's degree, I got a job working at the U of M in alumni and external relations, so fundraising, events, things like that. And during that time, I had friends that were starting to get married. I got engaged myself, and a high school friend of mine, we were still very close. We were eating for lunch one day and we were just talking about how basically wedding decor is kind of a ripoff. Like what you pay to rent it is
Hmm.
what you'd pay to buy it. And we were like, we can do this, you know? So we did. That was the first business I started. And I had that while working at that job. I worked as a communications and development director at a nonprofit.
Okay.
And then I started doing consulting and did the event rental company too. And so doing like program evaluation projects.
Hmm.
And so that was the first business I started. And then 2 years later, I started a second business with her as well, a dog daycare.
Okay.
And so I was doing consulting, I had the dog daycare, I had the event rental company, I had a child, and I was doing my graduate coursework. So it was a little busy.
Yeah, I would imagine. My God. So, so what happened to the first the wedding company? Where did that one go?
Yeah, so let's see. I started that with her in 2008.
Hmm.
I bought her out a couple of years into it, and I grew that. I mean, we were doing like 500 events a year.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
And
and
what exactly were you doing? Like explain, what that
yeah.
business did.
So when we first started, it was just chair covers and table
Okay.
linens. So like
Okay.
those fabric pieces that make a chair look nicer.
Hmm.
And expanded it over time to do ceiling draping, lighting, uplights. After I bought her out, I added a lot of stuff on floral design,
Hmm.
Shivari chairs, charger. I mean, just pretty much anything that you were needed for an event, we had. And so,
Okay.
like huge nonprofit galas, tons of weddings, things like that. So decoration items basically, and
Okay.
then day of like help planning,
Yeah.
event planning type stuff.
Very cool. And how did you, I mean, 500 weddings or 500 events a year. I mean, that's quite a few events you're doing, pretty well every day, every weekend. How did you number one, how did you grow like that? How did you get your name out and number two, how did you manage, all of that inventory and in and out and this wasn't rented yet for this weekend. How did you set up all the systems and processes that allowed you to do that?
Yeah. So you know, it was a really great first business because with that, it didn't require a lot of startup capital. I mean, a
Hmm.
couple $1,000s, very little. I mean, no financing or anything, because you needed samples. So you show people samples, you'd book the events, and then you'd buy the items you needed, a month before or so.
Okay.
And so it was an easy thing to like slowly like add stuff when you needed it.
Hmm.
But within, I want to say a year or so, I mean, we were out of our homes, and so we were like, okay, we need a space, and so
Yeah,
we got like a warehouse, and we're still doing the laundering out of our homes, which was awful.
I
Like
can imagine. Yeah.
it was awful. And then when I bought her out, I bought a commercial building that I put it in, and it was really nice because it was a large commercial building,
Hmm.
and it had like a full basement, and then it had an upstairs, so we had like a showroom, we had a laundry area, and so I was able to use that to grow and have more of like a show place for people to come in and meet, which helped a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
But I think part of it too is, I mean, obviously customer service, word of mouth, and
Hmm.
I really really worked hard, I guess, to try to make sure people had a good level of customer service. Uh, we had a fair number of staff, but because of the hours of it, I mean, 95% of it was Friday to Sunday. I mean,
Okay.
almost everything was during that time frame, and
Yeah.
so we would need a lot of people to work like a lot that weekend,
Yeah.
and so I think, I think in terms of like systems or processes, I mean, honestly, like, I don't know if I would ever say I got like that official with it, if you know
Okay.
what I mean. I
Okay.
mean,
Yep.
I would document like, okay, when launder these, make sure you use this chemical if you have this, or I mean, like some of those things, but uh, it just never got to the point where I think I went to that level because it was it was a really it was a really stressful business because
Absolutely.
when everybody gets to relax, like the time everybody's having fun is when you're
Yeah.
constantly worried that a staff member is going to call in sick. I mean,
Yeah.
the fall I sold it, and sold off all the extra stuff was we had a weekend in October. We had like 22 weddings one
Oh
weekend,
my God.
and I
Wow.
had like 6 staff call in, and I spent, no joke, I mean, I want to say it was like 6 a.m. on Friday through the night until 5 p.m. on Saturday. Had to go back to do takedowns for Saturday's wedding at
Yeah.
2 a.m. Had to do multiple because the staff called in, and I
Yeah.
mean, like, so I'm driving the box truck, and we still had a number of staff that were working, but we had so many weddings. I mean, and that's the thing about events is most venues, they give you a 1 or 2 hour
Window.
window to take
Right.
stuff down. And so it's super stressful. And that was just like the last weekend for me because the margin on that business was nowhere near as good as even like the dog daycare. And
Yeah.
so for
Yeah.
me, it was just, this isn't worth it. I don't want to deal with this anymore.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So then you started the dog daycare, and how did that one end up? How did you get into that? And then how did you exit it, or what ended up happening with it?
Yeah, so that one, that same friend, we were setting up a wedding and tying sashes around chairs, and I was telling her about I was on the board of animal rescue,
Okay.
and there was somebody that was involved with that rescue that had just started a dog daycare, and I had chatted with him about it, and he was just telling me about how great it was, like how profitable it was, how, I don't want to say easy, but like how it was a
Yeah.
really great business to try. And so I brought it up to her and was like, we should do this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she was just all in. And so we're kind of the type of people that are full steam ahead. So as soon as it was like, yep, we're going to do this, and we're like, all right. So the next day we're like searching, looking for properties. We found a huge warehouse, like a 25,000 square foot warehouse.
Okay. Okay.
We did not get any like financing. We just credit cards and
Wow.
some money savings.
Just
I mean,
went for it, huh? That's
we were
great.
there like painting, our
Yeah.
husbands were there, I mean, but and we worked there for the first, I mean, us too, because we don't want to lose money, I mean, so
Yeah.
if we didn't have enough dogs to justify the staff, we were there, so we
Yeah.
would take turns all day, all night.
That is
um
cool though. I mean, I love dogs, so that is a great thing to be a part of.
I love dogs too, and I mean, I was on an animal, so I love dogs, I grew up with
Yeah.
dogs, and so it was super fun because I got to see so many different types of breeds that you just,
Yeah.
I don't know, it was really fun. But so within a month or two, it cash flowed, and then essentially over the next 6 months we stopped working there completely, and had both of them, then the event rental and the dog daycare. But at that point it was just me doing the event rental, her doing the dog daycare.
Yeah.
So then I had kids. I had kids before we started the dog daycare, but I had kids and I was looking for childcare, and I just couldn't find anything that was what I wanted. We were moving over to the east side of the Twin Cities, and there was just no language immersion. There was only one center that was even close to what I wanted,
Hmm.
and they had like a 2-year wait list. And so,
Wow.
having started other stuff, I was just like, I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So you jumped right into it. So you still had the other two businesses at that point too, yeah?
Yep.
Wow. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So 2013, I started Tierra. So I had it in my head that I needed to find a previous daycare site. So it has to be something that was a daycare before, is what I thought
Okay.
I needed. I did get my first business loan for that one, a small business loan, 7A, and found an old daycare, which shows me how wrong I was about that idea because I literally demoed the entire space and redid
Oh,
it.
wow. Wow.
but but yeah, so 2013 through 2016, I owned all three. And in 2016, I sold my half of the dog daycare because I wanted to buy a building for my daycare.
Hmm.
And then the event rental company I sold, but like I didn't like put it out for sale and wait. I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm done
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And
You were
so
done
I
with it.
contacted a competitor and negotiated, price, and then the rest I just put up for auction just so I could wash my hands of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So talk a little bit about the company you have, Terra Enchanta. Is that how you say it?
Tierra Encantada.
Tierra Encantada. So how did you come up with that name?
So that, honestly, I wrote lots of ideas that sounded nice in both languages, but
Hmm.
also had a feel of what I was going for because I mean we do organic food, and
Oh, wow.
I played around with a lot of combinations of different things, and then went to, a domain site and figured out what was available. And
Yeah.
then I just asked some thoughts of different friends of mine, and it landed on Tierra Encantada. And it sounds nice in both languages. I mean, in English, it's Enchanted Land. I wanted
Yeah.
something that sounded like a daycare too.
Yep. Yep.
So
I love it. I love it. So what's the differentiator with that? I mean, you mentioned that you're doing organic foods. What do the programs look like? What was
yeah,
what types of things did you implement there?
yeah. So we are definitely very unique when you think about some of like the top 10 childcare providers. Uh, Not only our meal program, so every one of our centers has its own commercial kitchen on site with
Oh wow.
cooks.
Mm-hmm.
So we are able to accommodate a huge variety of different special food needs and allergies.
Mm-hmm.
But our recipes are things like couscous with tofu or quinoa
Oh
with
wow.
avocado. I mean, things that most kids never get to try unless they have a parent that just really makes that and really loves that. And I think a lot of those types of things can be a little intimidating for families to make if they've never
Mm-hmm.
made it before. But then also the language immersion. So kids are immersed in Spanish. So every part of the day is in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So the teachers only speak Spanish. I mean, so it's like how we learn English. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're a baby, your mom isn't like this, like very intentionally doing things like that. It's natural. You're
Yeah.
immersed in
Yeah.
it. And then the final piece, well, I guess two other pieces that make us different is we offer cloth diapers. So
Okay.
it's our own cloth diaper. We have them for the kids in our care. They can't go home in them, but throughout the day, and so it's
Yeah.
eco-friendly. But then also we have over the years created our own proprietary curriculum, and with that, in early education, a lot of the curriculum is outdated. You could
Mm-hmm.
say it doesn't really represent, I guess, make all children feel represented is maybe a good way to put it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's always been something that's very important to me, is that we reflect not just the diversity of, say, race and ethnicity, but also family type, because we have a lot of families where there's two moms, there's two dads, transgender child. I mean, and if kids don't feel whole, like in their environment, if they feel like they're odd, then
Mm-hmm.
that just impacts how they feel about themselves. And so that's another thing that makes us different and special.
So it's all inclusive
Mhm.
and yeah, that's amazing. So what types of you're obviously teaching Spanish. Are you teaching other skills, maths, and all of that as well, or what types of
Yeah.
programs do you offer?
Yeah, so think of it like this. Spanish is the language that the curriculum is delivered through. So
Okay.
it is similar to any other like early education program in terms of best practices with social emotional development, early literacy skills, math, but the vehicle that is being given to children in is Spanish.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. And what have been some of the challenges that you've run into with building this company?
I would say I probably waited a little too long to have corporate staff.
Okay.
um, Up until last summer, it was just me and our COO.
Okay.
Uh, and I mean, at that point, we were what, $5 million. I mean, and we had a lot of employees and staff. And so in the last 18 months, that's what I've really focused on. And now we have 20 plus corporate staff, and
Okay.
it has just made things so much easier, better, higher quality. I mean, all around, that's something I definitely should have did earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you go about finding some of those? So you had a CEO. What was the next hire that you brought on, you know, after that one?
HR coordinator.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that makes
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
That is always a challenge going through all of that. We're actually doing that right now, onboarding everybody here. So we have our director of operations. That's kind of what he helps with all the HR stuff. So we're still kind of in that transition period ourselves, where still wearing a couple different hats. But what other types of people did you bring in early on, or within the last 18 months or so?
Yeah. So the HR coordinator was definitely a key one, though I went about honestly the wrong way. I mean, I was kind of thinking of it like a position. They're going to obviously do HR, but they also could help with multiple things, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was important that they had certain backgrounds, but I didn't stress the longevity of experience in HR, which was definitely a mistake because we have an amazing HR manager now that
Hmm.
has a decade of experience and it has been like the difference maker. And
Yeah.
but after that, the next two hires was a person to do like bookkeeping. We'd outsourced it,
Yep.
and then office manager just help with miscellaneous
Yep.
stuff. And then we were launching franchising last spring, and so uh, I really believe in do it once, do it right. And
Yeah.
so, I wanted to make sure that we had the structure, the staff in place so that as we have franchisees come on, it's not like it's just me and I'm busy, like they actually have people that they can have as resources to make sure like every week they can connect with them. And so
Hmm.
hired franchise person, a marketing person. And now we have a lot of different, we have people in family relations. We have, uh, oh yeah, last year we hired a full-time curriculum coordinator. She's a master's
Okay.
in curriculum design. But so really like we kind of fleshed out all the different areas. The only area we don't have somebody hired right now in is IT, because
Okay.
I just don't know if the need is there for like a full person yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Soon though.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So how are you finding these people and how are you qualifying them as being someone that you match with and can do a good job?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one because it is so hard to know that.
Yeah.
And if there's anything I've learned in the last year, because we have certainly made hires in the last year that were like, ooh, this wasn't the best hire. The one thing I've learned is to be very straightforward in the interview process
Hmm.
about everything about the position. And when we hired our HR manager, I was super honest. I was like, the person we had in this before didn't have a lot of experience, and honest, like you're going to come in, you're going to be creating a lot of
Yeah.
systems, a lot of processes. Like this is what you're going to be coming into. And I told people in the interview process, because if people know what they're coming into, and then seeing how they talk to you about that and their
Yeah.
reaction, I think that really helps weed out some of that. And then having our HR manager, because having somebody focus specifically on HR to that has experience, so knows what a normal pay is for something, knows what the normal
Hmm.
benefits are, that does the screening and then does the phone interviews and finds those questions out before you get involved. It has just been a huge help for us. And so
Yeah.
I would say that has been a really big help too.
No, that makes sense. What are so you mentioned some of the franchising and all of that. How has that worked for you? I mean, are you able to obviously expand your footprint out into other geographies? I, I guess I mean there's a lot of questions there. How did you come up with the franchising option? Was that kind of always on the product path? And then, like I said, how did you go about launching that?
Yeah. No, it was not. I was actually pretty not interested, pretty opposed to it. I had been approached by people about franchising, and I Tierra of all the different things I've done, of all the different businesses I've done, Tierra is one that is really close to my heart. Like I really, I guess, I don't know. It is me. I really believe in it. I really. It's not like I didn't care about the other business, but I like really care about it. And for that to franchise, I was just worried that I don't know, a franchisee would offer like a crappy option or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
They would dilute the brand. I was worried about all of that. And I wanted to do our own growth. Like I wanted to do corporate growth. I wanted to do that expansion myself, not using franchisees nor outside capital, because I was also approached to do a national expansion with an equity firm. And I wanted to do that myself because I feel like I've already had a I've already had a business partner. And it's not to say there's anything wrong with having a business partner, because sometimes if you don't have a business partner, the business isn't going to happen. And in
yeah,
those
yeah,
cases, absolutely. But if you can do a business by yourself, then you should.
yeah,
Because I found with business partnerships, there's just different values there, I think, a lot of times. And no value is necessarily like right or wrong. But for me, it's always been really important to me things like I want our staff to think of this like a career. I don't want to
yeah,
be like, some of our competitors where they pay staff minimum wage and they're going through a new employee every week. Like I want to show staff like I value them. And so,
Hmm.
I mean, from when we opened, we've offered medical and dental insurance. We're adding 401k this year. I mean, so those things make it hard. And so with franchising, how I kind of got to that is there's daycare is a pretty saturated industry, you could say, but saturated in the sense of kind of the same old type of center.
Yeah, right.
So I thought national expansion, and I was buying my building. So I own all the buildings except for one.
Hmm.
Well, buying requires a lot more equity
Yeah,
than leasing
exactly.
does.
Yeah.
And I had picked my first out of state location. I was
Okay.
gonna open. I'd done all this research. I had somebody working on for like 6 months, narrowing it down to five. Then I picked the final one. We'd been looking at buildings, and then a competitor announced they were opening one there with a franchisee, and I was just
Okay.
like, oh my, I was like devastated because I just spent so much time. I had no idea like they were looking or anything. And I was just like, oh. And it kind of made me realize, okay, if I don't franchise, then I'm going to not fulfill the vision that I
Yeah.
have, which is for
Right.
us to be in the top 10. And I feel like comparing us to competitors even, I just feel like we should be the ones there because of how the whole package, like not just what we have in our program, but how we treat staff, because how you treat staff is important. I mean, for us, we always say employees are number one because, I mean, if you don't have happy employees, you're not going to have happy customers.
That's true. Absolutely. Absolutely. So how did you go about setting up again all of the franchisee package, I guess you can say? Like what I'm assuming you have to systematize all of that. I mean, is there you need, this much space for this many kids? I mean, how did you set all of those types of questions up?
Yeah. So I was really fortunate that the small like the attorney team that I had used for miscellaneous things, they were like a small business law firm in the Twin Cities, and they had one of the partners is a franchisee and one is a franchisor. And so
Okay.
talking to them helped like dissuade some of my concerns and stuff about making sure we have very clear and brand standards and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Right.
uh so once I found that out about that site, like within a month, I was like, okay, we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
And so it was full steam ahead. I mean, within a month and a half, we had our whole FDD, and
Wow.
we registered. And by May, I think was the last state we were registered, every state except Hawaii. And
Okay.
and for all the for all of the document systems, policies. I mean, at this point, when we did this, I already had three centers open.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
I had opened two in 2 years, between 2016 and 2018, I'd opened two. And now I've opened two since then. And I just had already done this so many times where it's open, open,
Hmm.
open, and so
You already
we
had that
we already
process.
yeah, we already had, a good system down to do this and to help franchisees with this. And it really helped for me because I was actually the general contractor
Oh, very cool.
for the Bryant location project and then for our expansion at Egan. And I have been the one that does all of the city stuff, like the variances, conditional use permit, all
Yeah.
that stuff. And so I have been involved with literally every piece of our company. And so when we have franchisees, I can help with that because they're doing that. But we have a
Yeah.
really great team now too. And we have a former like planning person from a city too that helps with that too.
That's amazing. I love it. What types of tools are you guys using to create all of your documentation in that? Is it all in Google Drives, or are you using any other types of tools to be able to create and track and manage all that?
Yeah, yeah. So we have a few different software suites. So we definitely are a G Suite
Hmm.
company.
Hmm.
I love G Suite, but we have ProCare, which is a childcare management software,
Okay.
and it is not beyond just a childcare management. It actually has like a time card function with like thumbprint and code, and so that's really helpful because then you can have it all into this online system.
Yeah.
And then we also, for franchisees specifically, we use Fran Connect. And so Fran Connect, I think it's the most widely known software for it for franchisees specifically because you can set up, you have all your documentation, you can add
Hmm.
trainings and news and all things like that, deadlines, and so that's what we use for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what's next for you guys? What are you planning now?
More centers.
Yeah.
I mean, we started franchising a year and a half ago. We have franchisees in Virginia, Alabama, Texas, North Carolina, uh, Minnesota. And we're also doing corporate centers. So we have 2 leases already signed. We're opening one in Chicago next year and then
Mhm.
another one here in Minnesota. We have another 3 sites that we're looking at. And so my goal that I told my team is 5 corporate centers next year,
Yeah,
5.
yeah.
But I mean, our goal is within the next 5 years to have at least 100 is the goal. So continuing growing through both corporate and franchise growth.
I love it. I love it. This is you've really had quite an entrepreneurial story here. So this has been fantastic, and certainly thank you again for being on the show, and wish you nothing but success with the franchisees, your own corporate expansions, and can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.